Hi, my name's Clay Rose of Gasoline Lollipops, and we're releasing our new album Nightmares on Octave Records. Coming soon. We were born to a line of dreamers. They all did what they could do. When Octave first approached me about doing a DSD album, I guess my first reaction was bewilderment because I have no idea what DSD was, and also just the fact that it was a record that was going to be recorded and we weren't going to have to pay any money and we would retain the rights to the songs just seemed too good to be true. And I've had some bad experiences with record companies in the past, back in the days of record companies. And so I was a little bit apprehensive. But it turned out to be exactly what they said it was going to be. Lay your head against my chest. We can't save them, they're in too deep, but we'll do our best. Yes, we'll do our best. Software for DSD doesn't have the editing capabilities that Pro Tools has. It doesn't have the plugins, which basically means you are who you are when you record to it. You can't auto-tune the vocals or wash everything in reverb if things are a little out of time to try to hide that, or edit together a whole bunch of vocal tracks to get the perfect one. So it's more revealing, I think, to the nature of the artist, and there's less to hide behind. Everything's on fire. In my opinion, I come from punk rock and folk roots, and that's the nature of those kinds of music, is to sound human and to be human, and you let the rhythm move if it moves, and you sing out of key if that's the take and the vibe is there, then the vibe is king, and so you can't get too narcissistic with it. And then when everything went digital, then we started getting narcissistic folk singers and punk rockers, and it took the folk and punk out of the music, and now everything's pop. We rearranged a few older songs that we had previously recorded, and we didn't like the recordings. They were either being played too fast, or we were just in too much of a hurry when we recorded them and we didn't get the takes we wanted. And those songs that we rearranged were probably at least 10 years old, but they were songs that we really loved and we thought that they needed another shot. And so we rearranged them in a more sparse arrangement, more acoustic and more ethereal, because we thought that would lend itself to what Octave does more. And then the new songs I had written, I'm always writing a lot, and so I had a bunch of songs, but I chose the ones that were more acoustic and spacious for the Octave record. So for us, it's a huge departure from our normal sound. We're usually really rough and rowdy and loud, and this album is very intimate. The arranging of songs, typically I write all the songs, and then when it comes to the arrangements, unless I heard something very specific in my head when I was writing it, which happens occasionally, but unless that happens, I take the songs to them, and it's a very communal effort, and so everybody gets to chime in, and it's a democracy, so the best idea wins. It was awesome. Yeah, Jay is he's as fast as anybody could possibly be on that software, and he's found all kinds of tricks for editing, and it takes him a little longer than it would take somebody on Pro Tools, but he moves faster than anybody I've ever seen move on Pro Tools, so he makes it totally painless. Walking into that mixing room was really nerve-wracking because I was listening to the mixes with two people that I didn't know. And like I said, these recordings are very bare bones and raw, and I don't think I've ever recorded a record that features me personally as much as this record does. Like, my vocals are very upfront and personal. They're not kind of tucked away in a wash of rock and roll. So I was nervous, and I felt very exposed, and I wasn't sure if people were going to like these songs or like these mixes. So that was what was psychologically going on with me. But I think it sounded good, and I guess the proof was in the pudding when I looked around and everybody in the room was crying. So I was like, oh, I guess the songs came through, so that's good. The name is, the name was thought of before I even played guitar. When I was in high school and I was hanging out with some friends on a summer night, and we were all on LSD, and we were thinking of cool band names, doing that game, because it's just an entertaining activity, and somebody said Gasoline Lollipops. And I was like, wow, that's the coolest name ever. I was like, that's so cool. I'm going to learn how to play guitar, and I'm going to start a band, and I'm going to call it Gasoline Lollipops. And it was 10 years later that I finally started the band. As far as the songs go, there's probably a couple stories that folks should know. One is Midnight Dance. That song was written during the lockdown for the pandemic, right after the George Floyd shooting happened and riots were taking place in Denver, and the foothills outside of Boulder were on fire, and my wife and our newborn baby and my 10-year-old son were at home literally watching the fires burn out our window, and I was going down to Denver to the protests and getting shot with tear gas, and there was this feeling, an overwhelming feeling of the apocalypse, like the end of days, and we had this newborn baby, and so I needed to spin the story in a way that had hope in it, right, for my wife and my kids. And so I wrote that song about that, just acknowledging what's happening in the world. And the refrain is like, basically the world's burning down, so how about a midnight dance, and like, let's just seek solace in each other. And that was the only place I could really find it at that moment, was in our nuclear family. So and it was enough, and I think that's the main function of friends and family and community, is that when the world's burning, there's something to hold on to and give you hope. So that's the story of Midnight Dance. And the other one is Mary Rose, and that song, so this is like 2005. One of my sisters was murdered in a domestic violence dispute, and she left behind 2 children, and her son at the time, her daughter was an infant, but her son was about 7 or 8, and so I was thinking of him when I wrote that song. And so Mary Rose in the song is my sister, and it's sort of a fairy tale song as it's written, about her dying on a riverbank, and she has a watermelon pit in her mouth, and that's just one of my main memories of her, because I would spend summers in Tennessee with my mom's side of the family, and we'd always have these watermelon pit wars. We'd eat watermelon in the summertime. It was really hot. We'd put on our swimsuits and go out in the yard and spit watermelon seeds at each other, and they would stick, so you know if you got somebody because it stuck. So I associated her with the watermelon. So in the song, she's dead on the banks of the Harpeth River, which is the river that ran by our house, and She has a watermelon pit in her mouth, and the sun is going down, it's starting to snow, and she sinks down into the mud of the river, and in the last verse, the sun is rising, and her son, Jackson Rose, is walking out to the river, and he sees out in the snow on the riverbank a huge watermelon vine that's sprouted overnight, and it's got all these ripe watermelons on it, and he goes out and he breaks one open and takes a bite, and it tastes like home. And so I was just trying to spin it for him in a way that didn't make death seem so final, and also reminded him that she is alive in him. He's the watermelon seed, you know. So it was a tough song to write. Most nights when I play it with the band, that's one that we rearranged also, and our most normal version was on Resurrection, and that's the version we play live, and it's a rocker, and people don't really notice the lyrics, and so they just get up and dance, and it's like the crowd favorite for dancing. But we rearranged it for this record to fit the vibe of the song more and to showcase the lyric so that people can really hear it. And in that format, that song was so difficult for me to record. I had to break probably 5 or 6 times doing the vocal, and at one point I just fully broke down and went outside and bawled for like 2 hours and called my mom. She calmed me down, and I got back in and finished the song. But yeah, I would say, and also when I recorded it, yeah, there was a lot of people in the studio that day, and they we're all crying. So it's but at face value, when you listen to it, if you don't know the backstory, it's just sort of this, you know, melancholy but magical song about a girl passing. And, yeah.
Mary Rose. As dawn came on, a little boy's song broke upon the Harpeth shore, at the place where Mary Rose once lay, but her body lay there no more.